All right. So let me see. So my name is Dawn Gallardo. I'm a counselor on campus. There's 3 counselors. There's myself, Paul Curd, and Margaret Vallejos. I've been here for about a year. I moved here from North Dakota last July. And so kind of familiar with what your team does in terms of the peer navigator. So I'm really excited to be speaking to all of you just about managing challenging situations, but also about taking care of yourself, because I'm sure you're going to run into some situations this upcoming school year. All right, so start out with just finding out, how do you stay calm during the storm? What do you do when the person you're trying to help is upset, angry, frustrated, and it feels like it's being taken out on you, or the person is exhibiting irrational behavior? I'm sure you've all witnessed this, or with friends, family, other students, but in your role, sometimes students are going to be coming to you for some solutions or for some help, and they may be upset, frustrated, hurting, sad, and you just want to make sure that you're able to manage those situations as best possible. Some of the things I hope to figure out and to discuss as we're visiting today are just to increase an understanding of what our responses are to difficult situations and how do you respond to difficult behaviors. How do you identify helpful verbal and nonverbal communication? How do you identify barriers to helpful communication? And how do you identify ways to reframe negative responses to positive ones? I think that's one of the harder ones, is figuring out how you respond to your peers in a positive way rather than a negative one. So think about, as we go through, different ways that you've handled situations, ways that you wish you would have handled it better. And hopefully through this presentation, you'll identify some new ways to address challenging situations as they present themselves. So dealing with difficult behavior, it's really important to stay calm, to use good listening skills, to put aside judgments, to help explore options but not fix the problem. Not taking it personally, that can be really difficult for some people, sometimes more difficult for others. And then just know when to seek help. Is everybody muted? Because I can hear like an echo. Can you mute? Thank you. All right. So these are some different areas that we're going to go more in depth on. For listening, it seems really simple, but really, you know, you have to be really attentive and you need to be intentional when you're listening to someone. The main components are just hearing what's being said, positive nonverbals, building rapport, listening techniques, and then the positive reframes. If you look on the other side of the slide here, it explains what active listening means, and it's really about removing all distractions, and that can be, you know, not working on your homework when someone's talking to you, not looking on your phone, but just being completely attentive so that people feel like they're being heard and that you're paying attention and you care about what they're saying. Listening to speakers' signs and sounds. So maybe you're not listening to just the words that they're saying, but you're also paying attention to maybe signs that they're giving off, or maybe sounds that may be going off as well. Feeding back that you have understood. So just, you know, rephrasing what they've told you, maybe even just repeating what they've told you, just so they know that you've heard everything that they've had to say. How to hear. Excuse yourself and step away from the situation to calm down. If you're feeling yourself getting angry or overwhelmed, frustrated, or upset, it really is okay to just take a minute and step out of the room, step away from the situation so that you can kind of regain your composure and maybe take a couple breaths. Don't engage in other work while listening, and we just kind of already talked about that. Just be present and attentive when people are talking to you. Listen to the speaker's complete thought. So a lot of times when people are talking to you, and I know sometimes I find this with myself, is you're thinking about how you're going to respond as they're speaking to you. And really that can be a hindrance and get in the way of how you respond to that person or how well you're really hearing what they're saying. So really just put yourself in a space where you're able to listen without constantly thinking about, what am I going to do after this meeting with this person? You know, what am I going to respond to? How am I going to respond to what they're saying? Just be present, listen. so that they feel, again, like they're being heard. And don't interrupt. As much as possible, try not to interrupt. Let them explain to you what's going on, and then you'll have your chance to speak as well. Acknowledge the speaker's emotions. So if somebody is crying or tearful, or they seem really angry, you might want to say something like, you seem really upset, or this seems like a really emotional time for you. Acknowledge that they are showing emotion, and perhaps even being really vulnerable to you, and might not feel like they're in the safest space. So it'll help to try to ease that concern for them. Also, just defer judgment about the speaker. I think people struggle with that sometimes. A lot of times somebody will be sharing something, and as they're sharing, the other person may be in their head, in their mind, coming up with some kind of judgment or assuming they know what's really going on. That's just not a good place to be. Try to just listen with the intent of understanding and not with the intent of judging what's going on with this particular person. So what does positive nonverbals mean? Have situation appropriate facial expressions. I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody and maybe you share something and they look shocked or have a face of disgust or whatever it might be. Just be really aware of your facial expressions and that you're not putting off something that you don't want the other person to feel, like unsure of them wanting to continue to share with you. Use open posture. You've probably heard this before. Try not to be sitting with your arms crossed. Try to just look open, that you're willing to hear and you're there to understand. Remove barriers. So I know in the Intercultural Center, when we are back on campus, I think there's a couple of desks there. Maybe move to the couch by the fireplace to visit with somebody, or I think there's like a window seat there, go to the window seat, or I know CIRE has those round tables with chairs. If you need to step out of the room, go sit at one of those tables with a student, or even outside the building, outside there's those table and chairs to go out there. Don't isolate yourself, but try to create a space where they feel safe talking to you. And then try to maintain maybe a slight lean forward. So just be aware of your posture, that maybe you are leaning in as they're speaking to you, and that just shows like, yeah, I'm interested, I do hear what you're saying. But also maintaining that appropriate personal space so that you feel comfortable and that they feel comfortable in visiting with you. Nodding your head while listening. I think a lot of people just do that in general, but just to be more mindful of it and make sure that you're showing that, yeah, I am hearing what you're saying. It is important that you're sharing this with me. So they're really simple things, and I'm sure all of you pretty much do those in your day-to-day lives, but I think when you're talking with somebody and they're really struggling, it's important to be mindful of these behaviors. So rapport. Rapport is one of the most important keys to working with people that are experiencing maybe a crisis or a difficult situation. The main thing is just being really friendly, being professional. So you guys are navigators, mentors to these students, and to keep that in mind, that the student is most likely coming to you because of your position as a peer mentor. So make sure that you keep that in mind when they're coming to you, and you keep that in mind when you're responding to them. Ask how you can help. Just be really open about, how can I help you? What do you think would be most helpful? Really putting it in their hands as well. And then giving them choices. You can say, we have counseling here, we have AIM, we have this, we have that, which one would you feel really comfortable approaching or maybe following up with? Use their name whenever possible. Again, that's probably something you guys all do anyways, just in your day-to-day life. It makes people feel less isolated. It makes them feel like you care enough to know their name. I'm sure you've heard this before, but there are a lot of studies that show that students of color tend to feel more isolated on college campuses. And so, just knowing somebody's name and knowing their face and recognizing them is helpful. Like I mentioned earlier, I moved from North Dakota, but I grew up from 6th grade on up on a reservation in North Dakota. And when I went to college, I went after spending a year at my travel college, and I went to the University of North Dakota. And we were really fortunate because our campus had a house for American Indian students. And so it was really like it's kind of like your intercultural center where we were able to spend a lot of time there. We had a kitchen and a fridge and a living room with a TV, and we had a computer lab downstairs, and we had tutors. And so it was just really a good place to feel welcome and not feel so isolated. We didn't live there, we lived in the dorms, but we still had this space that was ours. And so I think it led to a lot of students staying on our campus, because unfortunately, a lot of students that I graduated high school with left for a year to attend universities, but then they returned quickly thereafter. And so it's really, really important for retention that students feel that sense of belonging when they're coming to Whatcom. Reassure the person that you're there to help, or that you can get somebody that can help. You know, if you can't help, just be honest about it. I'm not sure how to address the situation, but I can definitely point you in the right direction. Or maybe talk to Tanya or Janice about helping you out with what the student needs at that time. So positive reframes. All right, so we're gonna look at the negative responses and then counteract that with positive responses. So a negative response might be like, I don't know. You know, that might be your first thought. If somebody asks you something and you're like, I don't know, try to come back with, let me find out for you. You know, let me look into this. Let me try to find this out for you. Another negative thing would be you can't do, and switching that with you can do. So a good example of that is a student coming in and saying, I really want to withdraw from a class, and you responding, well, the withdraw date has passed, so you can't do it, right? So a better response to that would be, you know, the withdrawal date has passed, but what you can do is you can talk to your advisor and your instructor about what are the options, and is your instructor willing to and able to maybe give you some extensions on due dates or maybe some extra credit. So trying to figure out, you know, what kind of options do they have rather than just saying, well, sorry, you can't do that. The other one is you have to, and replacing that with it would help if you, right? You don't understand, let me clarify. So that's a big one. A lot of times if you're telling somebody something and you don't feel like they're understanding what you're saying, and you say, oh, you just don't understand. Instead, let them come back and say, you know, let me clarify what I was saying. This is what I meant to say, and I'm gonna clarify it for you. A negative would be, I don't have anything to do with your problem. So switching that up with, here's who I'm gonna contact to resolve your problem. You know, someone comes in and says, I don't know what classes to register for, can you help me? To say like, well, we're not registration, we're not advisors, I don't have anything to do with this. Instead saying, you know what, here's who I'm gonna help you contact, or I'm gonna walk you over to this office or help you shoot out an email to this department because this is who can help you. Some of you are new to this, I know, so instead of, you know, saying, I'm new here, I just got here, I can't really help you, coming back and saying, you know, although I'm new, I'm gonna get somebody that can help you. Or I'm gonna ask my supervisor, I'm gonna ask another peer mentor, what's the solution or how we can help you. So instead of just cutting it off, a lot of times these negative responses will sever relationships with students really. And so if you can reframe those into positive responses, you're more likely to see these students again for help. So solutions, devising solutions. Develop solutions to help solve the problem. And if you're not sure of a solution, just contact a peer or a supervisor who can help you with that. Use positive language and reframes to help present solutions. And then as much as possible, try to be familiar with the campus resources. I don't know, you know, if any of you are new to campus, but if you are, I would say really try to get to know what kind of resources we have at Whatcom. There is AIM, there's counseling, there's the tutoring centers, and I'm sure there's a ton of other resources on campus that you can use, but that you're also gonna wanna refer students to. So just be proactive in finding out what those are and what kind of services they offer. Also, when we're back on campus, be willing to walk over a student. You know, I'm in Laidlaw, walk a student over to Laidlaw to schedule an appointment, or walk them over to the tutoring center, or, you know, wherever it might be, or the AIM office or whatever it might be, to make an appointment. Or since we're remote right now, you could always say, let's like get an email together and send it out right now to Dawn. You know, because sometimes what happens is students will say, yeah, I really couldn't see a counselor right now, and I'm gonna do that, I'll get to that, and then they never do it. And so it's nice to be able to say, like, let's just like devise an email together, and then you can shoot it out right now. Same thing with walking them over once we're back on campus. Another thing I do with students a lot when they're hesitant to do things like talk to an instructor or talk to an advisor, or whatever it might be, because they're unsure of what the response is going to be, I always do a best case, worst case scenario. So I usually say, like, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? And a lot of times after we do that, students are willing to follow through once they really figure out, like, the worst isn't as bad as I had kind of built it up in my head to be. And to be honest, a lot of times the best case scenario is what happens. Like, instructors a lot of times are willing to work with the students or offer an extension. So, and the worst case is they're not going to be willing to, but you're not going to know if you don't reach out. And so really, you know, try to use that with students as well. All right, so you've done all of that and the student is still not calming down. So what do? You can step away from the conflict, like I said earlier, just excuse yourself to try and look into the situation, but also to give time to that individual. It's okay to say, all right, let me just step away for a minute. I'll be right back, and take your little few breaths, gather yourself, and then come back to address the situation. But also giving them time can be helpful as well. Physically move the conflict to a different, less public location, but not isolated. I mentioned that earlier, you know, move to the SIRE common area, move to outside, whatever that might be for you, where you feel safe and you feel like you're going to be able to connect with this person. Contact a peer or a supervisor to assist with the situation. So it's okay to ask, you know, your other peers, but also Tanya or Janice, you know, can you help me out with this? The important thing about when you do ask for help, though, remain non-judgmental. Tell the individual that you're talking to about, you know, this is who I'm talking to, this is what's going on with this student, but make sure that you're just telling them the basics of the situation. A lot of times what happens is people will say, this is what the student is going on with the students, and they seem really upset and really angry, and I don't really understand why, because it's not that big. You keep all that stuff to yourself. Like, all that judgment, just, you know, keep to yourself. All you want to share with the other peer or your supervisor are the basics of the situation. They don't need to hear your judgments on the individual. So keep that in mind as well. And to be honest, I know this has happened to me a few times in other positions where I've had a student come in, and at the front desk, maybe they're a little angry or upset, and a receptionist or whoever will say, like, oh my gosh, this person's at the front desk and they're so upset, they're so angry. But then once I end up bringing them back, that's not what I'm seeing at all. And so there's no reason to put your judgment on what you're seeing in this individual, because it might not even be what the next person is going to see. So how do you help? Listen, don't rush to fix, advise, correct, or disagree. Refrain from judging, you know, seek to understand, try to see beyond that moment, because in that moment, yeah, they might be really frustrated and they might be rightfully really upset, but try to see beyond that moment. Like, that's not all they are, is this upset person. There's something beyond that moment. So keep that in mind. Empathize, reflect what's heard and what it would be like to be in their situation. So as a student is talking to you about their situation, you know, really try to put yourself in their shoes and think about how you would feel in a similar situation. Also normalize. So refer to the normal needs everyone has during stressful times, you know, saying things like, yeah, that would be really frustrating. I'd be really upset too. Like, it's completely normal that you're this stressed out with everything going on in the world right now. So really normalizing what they're experiencing and how they're responding, and making it normal to talk about well-being. And then validate. Acknowledge the individual is in a difficult situation. Don't minimize their concerns. So don't say like, this really isn't that big a deal. I don't know why you're so upset about it. That's not going to help the situation. Again, if anything, that will could sever a relationship. So you want to validate what they're saying, and making sure that you are listening. Again, we go back to just, really being there, being present. You don't want students feeling isolated. You want to help them find their safe spaces on campus, find supports on campus, whether that be through, mentors or clubs or whatever is helpful for that particular student. So I'm going to show you this slide, and it is from Active Minds. So Active Minds are students that advocate for education of mental illness, and there are chapters throughout colleges and universities in the US. And so this is one of their videos that they have posted, and it's only a couple minutes. So. Can you hear? Yeah.
Do you remember a time when someone needed you?
She'd just broken up with her boyfriend. His parents were splitting up.
She was anxious all the time.
He felt like he wasn't measuring up.
She failed a class.
They were outed by a teammate.
He wasn't himself.
She was assaulted. The bullying was relentless.
The future was terrifying.
They were struggling in their classes and falling behind.
Her drinking wasn't for fun anymore.
They felt hopeless.
What did you do?
I sat with her.
Told him I had his back.
Stood by them. We cried together.
We ate tacos.
Said I was there for him and meant it.
We danced to the Hamilton soundtrack on repeat.
Told someone.
I held his hand. Asked her what was wrong.
I listened.
Went to the counselor with her.
I started an Active Minds chapter.
I called the lifeline.
What did they need to hear?
It's okay to not be okay.
You're more than your grades.
You have permission to be human.
You are enough. It's going to be okay. You're not alone.
Help is available. It's okay.
Everyone is going through something, and everyone has a story.
67% of college students first tell a friend they're feeling suicidal before telling anyone else. We're in this together.
So one of the things I was able to be a part of last week, this month, July, is actually BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. And so last week, Active Minds put something together where they had BIPOC students from other colleges and universities sharing their experiences with how they're dealing with stress during this time. And there were probably about 7 students. If you're interested in at all watching that, it is on YouTube. It was recorded. And so it's I think if you just put like Active Minds BIPOC students, you'll see that. But it is interesting to hear how people are dealing or struggling with what's going on right now. And so being a part of that was very interesting. All right, so in summary, just remember you can't control the behavior of others. You can control your own behavior and manage the situation best possible, right? So don't beat yourself up about not being able to change what's going on with the other person, but to know that you can control your response. Stay calm and breathe. So just remember, stay present, stay calm, make sure you're breathing regularly. Be aware of body language and the tone of your voice. Sometimes, no matter what you say or do, the other person just isn't going to be happy. And you might have noticed that in some of your other relationships, you know, you can do your best, but sometimes no matter what it is you say or do, the other person just isn't going to be happy. You may help the person see options, but you're not expected to fix it. So don't, you know, overstress yourself out about how do I fix this? What do I do to fix it? Know that you can help this person see options, but you're not required to fix the problem. Lastly, to take care of yourself. And we're gonna go a little bit more in depth about what that looks like so that you're developing some kind of self-care practice for yourself. So when you are dealing with these situations, you feel more steady. So self-care, what is it really? There are a lot of definitions of self-care, but one of the definitions that I really liked was by the Dictionary of Nursing. And the way that they define it is the practice of activities that are necessary to sustain life and health, normally initiated and carried out by the individual for him or herself. The reason I liked this definition is because they said necessary. This is necessary to sustain life and health. It's not optional. It's not if I have time. It's necessary to be able to, you know, practice a healthy well-being and a healthy self-care practice. So what self-care is not, it's not about adding more to your to-do list. It can be about identifying your essential needs and then prioritizing them. So a lot of times what happens is people will make their list of to-dos and they'll be like, I got to write this paper. I've got to do the dishes, and then I need to get dinner done, and I need to do this, 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 and this. So they have this long to-do list, and at the bottom, it will say like, and then I need to go for a run, or, and then I'm going to sit down and read a book. But it's always the last thing on their list, and it's only going to happen if every other thing is done, which isn't the best place to be. And I have personal experience with this, of making these long to-do lists, and then the thing that usually gets cut off is the self-care piece of it. So really prioritize what you need to do. Like, can you move up the run or reading the book or sitting outside for 20 minutes? Can that replace your needing to make dinner or vacuuming? Or can you put your paper off for 20 minutes? I don't know, probably, you know, moving self-care up in that list. It's not about an emergency response plan. So, you know, it's not about when stress becomes overwhelming and you're close to burnout, all of a sudden you say, oh my gosh, I need to do this, or I need to do that. I need to rebalance, and this is how I'm going to do it. It's not an emergency response plan. It's something that you incorporate into your daily life. So it's about creating behaviors or healthy habits that you can do to nurture yourself on a consistent basis. It's also not about being selfish. I actually hear that a lot from students when we talk about self-care. A lot of students just say, I just think it's really selfish to take care of myself. Well, it's not. It's about looking after yourself so you can then give your best and provide value to the world by living your purpose and sharing your gifts. So, you know, really just making sure you're in a good place so that you can help others. So this is a picture of my little boy. We used to have a fireplace, and we had a meditating rabbit by it. And so my little boy was imitating him. And it just kind of seemed like, you know, he was figuring out what self-care looked like from something we had in our house. And so the 5 areas are really the physical, the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual, the personal. And it is important that you're, you know, practicing self-wellness, because students sometimes will look at you and they might, you know, be imitating what you're doing. They might be asking you like, hey, what do you do to take care of yourself? Well, I really like listening to podcasts, or I really like playing my guitar, or I really like this. And a student might be like, yeah, that might be really helpful. I think I'm going to try that. So that's why I kind of incorporated this picture, was just that students might be looking to imitate you and see what you're doing to better their own self-care practice. So we're going to look at physical self-care first. Physical self-care is engaging in activities that help you stay healthy and increase your energy to get through school, work, and your personal commitments. And that can be eating nourishing foods, exercising, whatever type of exercise that you do, hiking, walking, biking, whatever else that may include, getting enough sleep. So sleep is really underrated, and I talk about sleep a lot with students. It's really important, because if you don't get enough sleep, it's difficult to be fully engaged and to really, you know, give your best in any situation. So if you can figure out some kind of sleep routine, I would strongly encourage it. Taking a bath, for some people, they find that an important piece of their self-care process. Psychological self-care. So engaging in activities that help you develop resiliency. Resiliency is really just the ability to bounce back from difficulties. So, you know, different activities that can help you develop that or strengthen that are really important. So self-reflection, therapy for some people is really helpful. Journaling, something that I hear a lot is, I don't know what to write about, I don't know where to start. What you can do is if you ever Google like journal prompts, there are a lot of handouts on different things that can prompt you and get you started on journaling. Gratitude journals, you've probably heard about those before. Those can be brief and short, but also like bullet journals are really easy to do. And I think people are sometimes better able to be consistent with those. Digital detox. So I think this is really important. You know, putting down the video games, putting down the phone, not watching the TV, whatever it is, even if it's like for 10, 20 minutes, just really giving yourself a minute to be in the moment and be present without any kind of devices or something kind of skewing your attention. Reading a book. So reading can be a really relaxing thing to do as well. And I know a lot of people enjoy that. And if you are a reader, you know, plug that into your daily, you know, activities. Learning a new skill, practicing mindfulness, practicing asking for and receiving help. So for some people, it's really easy to ask for and receive help. For others, it can be challenging. And so just to have an awareness of that and try to, if it is difficult for you, make an intentional effort to get out there and ask for and receive help. So emotional self-care. Engaging in activities that allow expression of emotion, affirmations, self-compassion. Much of the time, we're harder on ourselves than we would be on others. So keep that in mind, that it's really important that we're compassionate with ourselves. Crying, laughing, identifying and utilizing your support system. So really looking at what does my safety net look like? You know, who are my supports? Cuddling with your pet, monitoring and regulating emotions. Again, you can use a journal for that. You can just maybe on a daily basis write down what you're feeling and what's going on that day. Look at it periodically, and then, you know, find out what was going on that day. Why was I feeling so upset? Or why was I feeling so lost? Or why was I so depressed that day? And sometimes when you're able to journal what was going on in the day, you're able to track your emotions, and then you're better able to regulate them. And so that's another idea for some emotional self-care. Spiritual self-care. So having a sense of perspective beyond the day-to-day of life, engaging in reflective practices like meditation, prayer, fostering self-forgiveness. I know I taught a class last quarter on anxiety and stress management. And one of the things some students struggled with was spirituality. A lot of people connect religion with spirituality, and that's not necessarily a connection. And so for you, if it is, that's fine. But for others, it might not be. It might look different. You know, like I said, fostering self-forgiveness, but also cultural ceremonies. I know for me personally, my mother, when I was growing up, she would attend a sweat every Sunday. And she would say, this is my church. This is how I regain balance. I need this. And for some people, it is attending a mass or whatever it looks like for you. And so there really are no limits on spiritual self-care. Reading religious texts or devotional materials as well can be something that people can incorporate into their spiritual self-care. So personal self-care. Engaging in activities that help to learn more about yourself as a person. So making a vision board, there's a little example of a vision board on the slide. Relaxing, spending time with family, fostering relationships, and picking up a new hobby. I think right now with all of this quarantining, fostering relationships can be a little bit difficult, especially if you have friends or family members that aren't really into Zoom or FaceTime or, you know, maybe some older family members that don't really engage in that kind of stuff. I know I for sure have family members that don't do that. And so it can be more difficult to connect, right, and to communicate other than by the phone. And it's really being intentional about fostering those relationships and making sure that you're finding different ways to connect, especially during this time, because it can be really isolating right now, and you just got to be able to identify what's going to work for you and what's going to work for your family and friends. So how do I begin to prioritize self-care? All right, so examine each area of your life, define what self-care means for you and how you plan to implement your own practice. Above all, self-care requires a commitment to one's own well-being as a priority. So that's really the takeaway is, make it a priority, plug it into your daily practices, and be consistent. Start small, build on existing good habits you might have, and just remember that self-care is a practice rather than a quick fix. So it's not something that you're going to do one day and feel better and then all's good. It's really something that you need to incorporate. One thing that I took away from the students last week, as I was talking about the students that are active in their Active Minds chapters, a student had pointed out one of the things he had said before he left. He said, remember, today's solution might not be tomorrow's, so keep adapting. So he had kind of explained that he had been running for a while, and he said, right now running's working for me. It's helping as a means of distressing. He said, but it hasn't always worked. Like, I've had to use other things in the past. So it's figuring out what's going to work for me today. Maybe a run worked yesterday, but today maybe just sitting down with a cup of tea is going to help me. Whatever it might be, just be willing to adapt and be open to looking at other means of coping. And you want to keep in mind healthy ways of coping as well. That could be like running, reading, journaling, gardening, just looking at what kind of things bring me ease. There's a lot of apps out there. And then the students last week actually talked about those, and I've had students in my office talk about different apps that they use, like Calm or Headspace, or there's other ones as well. So really looking at what's available and how can they be helpful to you. All right. That's the end of the self-care piece. What I want to lastly talk about are just the services that we have at Whatcom for counseling. So services are free. You're able to come in free for sessions. They're confidential. There are limitations on confidentiality, and every student that comes in to see a counselor reads through an informed consent, and they read all the limitations on confidentiality, and then they make a decision whether they're okay with that or not, and ultimately sign the consent if they choose to be seen. We serve currently enrolled students. If more intensive long-term counseling is needed, we provide referrals to counselors or agencies in the community. And some of the reasons that students seek counseling, we see students that are struggling with anxiety, depression, problem solving, academic success strategies, relationship problems, stress management, crisis intervention. So we see students for a variety of reasons. And actually, I'm really glad to be here talking to all of you, because a lot of the students that we see are referrals from maybe a family member's referring them to us, or a friend, or a peer mentor, or faculty staff on campus. We do see a lot of students that are brought in from different places on campus. So this is good information to share with students as you're visiting with them, but they can also go to our website, or they can, if nothing else, if you're willing to come over with them just to get an idea of what counseling looks like, we'd be glad to meet with you and the student if they feel safer, and we can just talk about, this is what you can expect from counseling. This is my contact information. So when I'm on campus, I'm in Laidlaw 116G, and then this is my direct number. My email is here as well. And then this is the counseling@whatcom.edu email. And right now, since we're remote, students can request appointments through this counseling@whatcom.edu. So like I said, it's different now because you're not able to walk them over, but what you can do is you can say like, hey, let's just compose an email really quick. This is what you could say, and then have them just shoot the email off to counseling@whatcom.edu. Like I said, there's typically 3 of us counselors in the office and checking these emails. So we do get back pretty quickly. So if students are requesting assistance or have questions about counseling, they can just email us and we can quickly get back to them. Does anybody have any questions?
They're a quiet crowd.
They are.
Or they'd be all muted. I'm myself. So no one has questions?
I might have one. As somebody who is like absolutely completely new, I started last quarter, which was probably the best quarter to start college again. Would there be like kind of like a, I don't know, like a list, kind of like a referral list that you can just like quickly like look up? Oh, I'm thinking about like one of those antiquated like address like flippy things. Not having that, but like something like that. Like I can easily just have a referral for all the things that are going on, all the different departments and whatnot.
So like all the resources on campus?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. And if it's in PDF form, it's really easy, I think, to Control F to find precisely what I'm looking for as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Tanya, do you know? Is there like a list of different resources on campus?
I'm thinking of a form that I helped Paul, but that one's more of the resources in the community.
Yeah, we have that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can talk to RH. They probably have one, like maybe the kind of like the view book I'm picturing. They have all the like a good summary of what we have, but I don't think we have a resource one on campus. But I mean, we can provide you with resources, like a list.
Yeah, I can check too with the other counselors. Like I said, this is my first year here, and I feel like I've kind of learned about the different resources on campus and in the community just by finding them on my own.
Yeah.
Just by, you know, a student needs something, so then I go find it. But I know it's a little tough for you because you weren't on campus yet.
Yeah, no, I was on campus for like a couple of days in March, and then everything shut down. So it's like, okay.
That makes it really tough.
Yeah, I was in Laidlaw like twice, and that was it. So.
Yeah, and then in the fall, you're completely online with your classes?
Completely online, yep.
Okay, because I know some of the HPAC classes are having some in-person labs, but yours are entirely online.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm relatively nearby though. Like I live literally right across the street from the Walmart, so it's not like totally against me just going there and walking around. Like if just take a walk there at some point, but right now it's going to be online anyways. So.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I can get something. I'll just have to. I'm gonna check with the other counselor. There has to be. I'm sure there's something. Oh,
yeah,
I can find it. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't know what I would have done had I not started on campus.
Yeah,
it has really been just like walking around and meeting people and figuring out what they offer and
right.
You know.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little harder.
Yep.
The other thing that we've been doing in the spring and this summer since we've been remote, we've been on Thursdays at 2:00. We do, the counselors come into, it's called Open Pod Hour. Right, Tony? That's what it's called? I think. Yeah, that's what.
I'm not sure.
This other Tony.
Oh, you mean me?
Oh.
Yeah, right?
It's actually Alex.
How come it says Tony on your?
Okay. Oh, I just do that just for fun.
Okay. All right, Alex. So that's what that hour's called though, right? Open Pod Hour?
It's actually called Open Space.
Oh, Open Space. Okay. So on Thursdays at 2:00, we go into, it's called Open Space. And it's basically just the, what are they? The pod leaders? The pod leaders. And do you know what the pod leaders are? Bree?
No.
Okay, so you'll find out about them, but there's only probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 that I meet with. So they all come in, and it's an open thing, kind of like the Intercultural Center, how they open this Zoom room.
Mm-hmm.
They open this room, and anybody can come, any students, and we just visit with them. It's not a group. It's not like a counseling group or anything. It's more like everybody just kind of talking about things as they come up. Like when the protests were going on in Seattle, that was the big discussion we talked about that week.
Yeah.
When now that COVID, you know, we're getting more cases, and people are trying to figure out how much more can I do? What can I not do? Like, I'm confused. That's what we talked about last week. So it's really like just a place to visit and talk about what everybody's experiencing, because right now I think a lot of people are experiencing the same things. But it's also getting the students to know us, so that they feel comfortable referring to us, but also coming to us when they have questions and concerns.
Right.
And the reason I point out Alex, because Alex comes to the open space sometimes as well. So he knows it's a really informal, just kind of an hour to talk about what's going on and what things look like. So if if any of you ever want to like just jump in, you know, you don't have to be consistent about it or anything. Different people come and go. It's just a really nice space to get to know other students, but also to get to know the counselors on campus. And then as counselors, we are also meeting with, we have a faculty open hour on Tuesdays. And so sometimes students will talk about stuff in our student hour. And a faculty member might have a question on Tuesday during our hour with them. And I'll be like, well, you know, students are really struggling with this, or students are really, like, I feel like some of that stuff I can bring over to the faculty that maybe they're not hearing straight out of the mouths of students. So it's been working really well. We started it in the spring, and we continued it this summer.
Yeah, I think that's also another good thing, a good reason for like a referential PDF as well, is to have all the, not just all the resources, but all like the Zoom IDs and the Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Like, yeah, and we can even, I mean, I can help with this as well, but we can like split it up. Like there's one for like staff for like just quick referential, like Control F finding. But if a student needs one as well, we can also like, the way that we would differentiate it is that we'd also give like a brief description of what's going on in these various Zoom rooms and these various resources. So like if you need help with XYZ, this is where you would go. If you need help with ABC, this is better suited for that as well. So.
Well, and I think everything happened so fast that people just kind of jumped in and tried to do as much as they could do. And no, but I completely agree with you. I think it'd be so helpful because I do end up sharing this with a lot of the students I meet with, and they're not aware of it. And so,
or if they are aware of it, they don't know where to find the Zoom link, the ID number, or anything. So.
Yeah, and I'm not good with any of this. Like I was just telling Alex, I need to go to his tech talks because all of this is new to me. And so I feel like it's just been rapid learning.
Right. Right. I think there's also something that I can proofread as well. I used to be a copy editor for a newspaper, and like the human brain hates looking at anything more than 12 decisions at once, which is why if you're browsing Netflix and you just keep going and going and going, it's because there's more than 12 decisions on the screen. Something to like keep the PDF easy and readable instead of just like a wall of text. We can use color and spacing to help with that as well. So.
Yeah, one thing you guys have done really well at the Intercultural Center though is getting your website updated so quickly to help students. I mean, I know that's what we're talking about with our, Tony, are you the one that helps out with the website? Is that?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, what, me, Tony? Oh,
yeah, you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think that's been kind of our area of trying to work on how we make it more student friendly, so students want to be there and can get the information that they need.
Yeah,
but it's a little challenging, but you guys have a great website. I can tell you guys put some work into it, and I don't get bored looking at it, so that's probably a good thing too.
That's the goal right there.
Exactly. Yep.
And I know my friend Nick, who's a PUD leader that is at, it's in your team. He's working on your guys' website as well, like your webpage, and it's about to be launching pretty soon, I hear.
Ours? Counseling?
Yeah, something like that. He said he's working on it. So
For the pod leaders.
the pod leaders. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't work with pod leaders. Becca had just approached us about that idea of jumping into their Zoom groups, and we kind of started doing it. But really, counseling is really small. There's only 3 of us, and we're our own department. So, yeah, we're kind of just all over the place. And when people ask us to be somewhere, we try to be there. And we really just hope that students are comfortable enough to come in and visit with us, but also to refer, to send students our way.
So, Bree, to clarify, the pod leaders are, it's like a combination of 2 programs. So 2 years ago, we had student ambassadors, which was some student leaders from Student Life office that they were doing tours and working in the front desk in the Student Life office and things like that. And then they AIM, which is the coaching, so it's Achieve, Imagine, Motivate. It's a kind of like advisors focused on first generation students, students of color. There's like criteria that AIM coaches have. So like we refer students to them. They have their own mentors. So last year, they combined both programs and they became pod leaders.
Okay.
So essentially, Becca, I think she's the program coordinator or something like that of the pod leaders, is running the program. So it's similar to ours, but ours is a little bit more focused on students of color, Yeah. So, and like we said before, we're hoping to have more of a group mentoring versus like they do more one-on-one. But yeah, so more information to come. I'm hoping to create like a manual or something that will provide resources. But like Dawn mentioned, like checking out the website will be a good one because we have a lot of cool things there. Do you have any more questions for Dawn or comments? Anybody?
Not right now. Not me, anyway.
Alternate?
Hi. Yeah, that's me. Hi, Dawn. I'm curious. My name is Alternate. I'm the international student from Kazakhstan. So I just wanted to say that in my country, there is no concept of flood counseling. So that's why I was like curious, like, wow, that's something new I should like discover and learn about. And so you mentioned that before, like sending to the community, you have like quick counseling. So I wonder, like, like how many sessions do you have before referring to the, to someone, or like is it like consistent? I don't know. I understand it depends like on the person and the problem the person might have, but like what do you normally do? Like, do you have like quick session or?
Yep, I understand. Where are you from again?
From Kazakhstan.
Oh, okay. So for us, we don't diagnose. So that's something to know as well. And when you're referring someone, you might want to let them know that because sometimes it makes a difference. Sometimes people are hesitant to see somebody if they think they're going to be walking away with a diagnosis. So we don't do that. In terms of how many sessions, really, we are really a short-term solution focused, right? But there are times when we will see students for a longer time because they need more support just getting through school, and they need, kind of that touchstone. And so for some students, I might start seeing them weekly when they first come in, but they don't feel comfortable completely not seeing anyone. So we might see each other twice a month, or maybe it goes down to once a month. But for a lot of students, like I said, there is that feeling of isolation and not having a direct support. And for some students, we are that person. And so it's important to maintain that relationship And so we will continue seeing students for as long as they need to be.
That's nice. Wow, thank you.
Yep, and if we do believe that they need more, like you pointed out and I pointed out, they would be referred to a community agency. So if we feel like, okay, this is what you're dealing with, we really feel like you need to dive more deeply into this and you need more intensive counseling, we will refer out. But I would say I don't know if it's supposed to, but I would say we're pretty flexible in terms of just helping the students the best that we can and making sure that their needs are being met while they're students at Whatcom.
Yeah, because I wanted to clarify just so I understand myself and I can explain better, because I'm sure there are out students who also doesn't know what the counseling is and like what you guys do, and they might be afraid to go to you, and
Yeah, no, when I explain it to students, I do say it's short-term solution focused, but then I also say, of course, there are those situations where we do continue to meet with students for a little bit longer while they're students. So that's what I would say, is there's no strong 4-session, 5-session rule or anything. So, and it's really, I think for a lot of times when students are referred, it's getting them through the door. Like you said, where you're from or with your culture, counseling isn't really, not talked about or not the norm. It's making it, something that we do talk about and normalizing it.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know, Tanya, if you guys have like our brochures or anything, but we do have information in there as well.
Do you have like an electronic version that you can send?
I think so. Yeah, I can get you that.
With my staff.
And I think it would be helpful because there are crisis line numbers on there, and there's local and national crisis line numbers. So should your students or your peer mentors ever need to give those out, they would be able to do that.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Dawn.
All right, thank you. See you
Hope
guys
you
later.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you, Dawn.
Bye.
You're welcome. See ya.
Thank you.
So to get Ben in here, how do we do it?
I got it. I can do Ben, getting him in here. Do you,
I want to give them a quick 5-minute break.
Yes.
5-minute break.
Yeah.
Don't go too far. Just kidding. Okay, it's 3:03. 3:03. Be back at 3:08. Don't waste any minute. Go stretch.
All right, did you hear what I said?
No.
I said Kobe was waiting to try to get in the meeting.
I got him. I know, I talked to him.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
They got
You only have 5 minutes.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Can you please change your name for our presenters?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Sorry to interrupt. And then I'll go get everybody waiting for us.
Should I stop the recording in the meantime? Pause. All yours.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm sure you've talked about this already today. This is a really odd way to do training. And so I just want to acknowledge that at the outset. I have never done a Zoom training before. So we are all going to kind of learn along as we go. I did some training with the RAs, but I did it in their building. So we're going to muddle through and we're going to figure it out. And I hope that, I hope that this works well for you all, and you feel free to ask any questions along the way. But before we get started, I'd really love for you all to introduce yourselves. I guess right now, thing that would be super useful is just name what you're working on here at Whatcom. And then I know I try to keep my icebreakers fairly short. So we'll do something along the lines of what is your favorite part of the pandemic life? And just try to be as as honest as you want to about that. So I am Ben. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Title IX and ADA coordinator here at Wacom. And my favorite part of the pandemic life is I've gotten to cook so much more than I normally do because I'm not wasting time on a commute. So I get to cook some really good food. So I'm going to shout folks out in order as they appear on my screen. So I know your names are here. I think it's better to hear it from you. So Alex, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, I'm Alex. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the student staff navigator for the IC. I've also been a student for 3 years at Wacom and still progressing in my CIS courses. One of the things that I had to do with the COVID crisis was like I had to reshape and realign my lifestyle. I had to get rid of some things in order to put like brand new things in perspective, which is the whole, like my whole entire way of studying now online. This is still fairly new to me. I miss going to the physical college, seeing my friends there. And yeah, but so far, I'm getting used to this whole thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to throw it to my right, which is Bern.
Hi, I'm Bern. I go by they, them, theirs. And what was the next part of the question?
Totally fair. What you're working on here at Wacom? So that's degree or job, whatever you feel like.
Well, I did apply for the Peer Navigator, and I have been a student at Wacom for at least a year now. I don't remember because I'm also a high school student. So, yeah. And quarantine's relaxing.
Awesome. Thanks, Bern. Bree or Bray? I'll let you tell me.
It's Bree.
Bree. Okay, great.
Yeah. Gosh, my name is Bree. I guess I'm working on an English something or other here at Wacom. This is my second go at college, and I still don't know what I'm doing, so it's fine. I'm at least on a better track than I was the first time. And then my favorite part of quarantine right now, I can be a hermit in general. So, I mean, quarantine didn't change my life too much after moving up here to Bellingham. But I've been having a lot of fun just watching the movies I've always meant to watch because I can draw, I can cross stitch, I can do whatever during those movies. Last night I watched 3, and I think my favorite one of those was Nightbreed, which is the Clive Barker film. I love horror movies, so Nightbreed wasn't great, but it was very special. So
great, thanks, Bree. Daniela.
Hello, my name is Daniela. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. I'm working on a transfer degree for Wacom, so I can transfer to university. And quarantine has given me a lot of time to learn about new things and study a lot of things that I'm interested in on my free time.
Nice. That's good stuff. Blaze? Oh, you muted yourself again.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Blaze, he, him, his. I'm working on the transfer degree. I don't know. This might be my last quarter. I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to see what's going on. But for everything is quarantining. Shit, just chilling at home, just playing a game and stuff like that. So that's my favorite thing. And what was the other questions?
Oh, that was it. You hit it.
All right.
Cool. Thanks. Kobe?
My name is Kobe. Pronouns are he, him, his. Currently trying to get a transfer degree. During quarantine, I've been at home, like chilling.
more time to do nothing. So that's about it.
That's not bad. Lizette?
My name is Lizette. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm working on my transfer degree, and a thing that I've been doing a lot during quarantine is reading. I've gotten to read a lot of books. So
Nice. Very productive use of your quarantine. Kudos. Demeo?
Hello, my name's Demia.
Demia, sorry.
That's all right. I have been at Wacom for about 2 years. This should be like my last quarter, maybe. Transferring to Western on a political science degree. Quarantine has treated me good. I'm not gonna lie. It's gave me a chance to start up my own businesses and just take advantage of like people staying home and doing whatever they want with their money. So he making me rich. Well, it don't matter.
That's awesome. Danny?
My name's Danny. I go by pronouns she, her, hers. This is like the end of my second year, so I'll probably be here for a couple more quarters or so. But I'm just getting a transfer degree, but I want to study English literature, or environmental studies. I'm still deciding. But I think with quarantine, I've gotten to do that self-care, like trying to take better care of myself. So I've been definitely trying to figure out what works best for me, which I didn't get a lot of time to do before this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Alante?
Hi. Alante, she, her, hers. What was the first part?
First part was name. What you're doing at Wacom. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, okay. I've been at Wacom for like a year, I think, or so. Yeah. 3 quarters. And just getting my associates transferred to Western. Not sure what. Well, yeah. Not sure what for yet.
Okay.
Maybe just it's kind of in the direction of music and singing and stuff like that.
Nice.
Or I don't know. I don't even know. But yeah. Favorite thing about quarantine. Not gonna lie, I hate it so much.
That's fair.
But I wish I could be able to take advantage of it like other people are talking. I think it's kind of a really actually, sorry. This is my favorite thing actually, is I came to Arizona to come to help take care of my grandparents. And it's actually been like the best thing since quarantine has started, honestly. Just getting out of my house and then coming to where the sun is, even though I'm inside because it's hot. And just spending time with my grandparents has been really a little stressful, but it's really fun because they're so funny. And I'm not around my little brothers who annoy me. So yeah, that's good.
That does sound good. Jackie.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Hey, Jackie, she, her, hers, and working towards bachelor's in business administration or business management at Wacom, and something in regards to quarantine life, cross training, and commute to the refrigerator. It's nice.
Most important commute. Tony?
What's up? Hey, my name is Tony. He, him, his pronouns. I'm the program coordinator for the. I'm the program coordinator for the Intercultural Center. I used to be a student. I graduated about a quarter or two ago. And in regards to this quarantine life, I've been trying to make sure I capitalize on the time at home. And so I think I've just been diving deeper into the many things I like to do. Like I have a lot of hobbies, so just dedicating time to them. And yeah, skating is like a new thing. It's a new old thing that I've been getting into, skateboarding. So that's fun. And it takes care of like my cardio too. So
yeah, which is important for sure. I have been slouching on that. I've been eating really well. I haven't been working out really well. So there hasn't been a balance there.
Yeah, cooking.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. It's iPhone on here. So
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I gotta change it. Yes. Hi, I'm Altine. I'm from Kazakhstan, and I came back in 2016. And since then, I've been attending WhatCom. So I finished early childhood education program at WhatCom, and now I'm doing the accounting one. So I'm still like not decided what I want to do. Okay. And I used to work for Student Life, and now I'm working as a peer navigator at the Intercultural Center. And the best thing about the quarantine is that my husband is home, so he got to slow down, and we spend a lot of time together.
I'm so glad to hear that you love spending time with your husband.
Yeah.
Lots of quarantine couples are not feeling that right now, so it's nice that you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Tanya.
Hello. Hold on. Places, because last time I guess they said I was looking scary. Now I'm dark. So anyways, I can't get the lighting perfect. My name is Tanya. I use she, her, hers pronouns. This quarantine life has been, I would say, I mean, for me, it doesn't make really much difference because my life consists of working from home and then commuting to the hospital. So back and forth, back and forth. I feel like one thing that I've been doing a lot more is cooking, or try to, so that I don't eat out so much. But, and I mean, like, kind of like how Jackie said, it's kind of nice to have the fridge close by versus like, if I went to work physically and I didn't take enough food, then I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to go buy something at the co-op or Cali tacos, which I miss. But yeah, all right. So I'm gonna let you run.
Okay, great. I too missed Cali tacos, which is why I have been up exclusively. I live like south of town and by quite a bit, and my wife and I have driven up a couple times exclusively to get California tacos. That's been our only purpose of the like 40-minute drive up to campus for us. And it has been absolutely worth it. No regrets, even a little bit. Okay. So thank you all for taking the time to introduce yourselves to me. I really appreciate it. I know that you all have probably done that and have done your best to ice break with each other over Zoom, and I really appreciate all of that. So the reason that you're chatting with me all today is I'm your Title IX coordinator on campus, which means I handle all of the sexual assault and sexual misconduct complaints that happen on campus. And so we're going to spend a little time talking about that today. So we're going to kind of acknowledge at the outset that we're going to touch on those topics. I am not going super in depth. We only have a couple hours together today, which just really isn't enough time to go super in depth with the work that I do. But it's a good starting point for us to start the conversation, and is a good time for us to kind of talk about the urgent topics related to Title IX and the world that I live in and the work that I do. As employees of the college, you all are what is called responsible employees. And what that means is if you learn of sexual assault, discrimination, or sexual misconduct that happens on our campus, you need to let your supervisor know, or you need to file a report with the college. And so that's what we're going to that's kind of the basis of why I'm here with you all today. So that way we can talk a little bit about what it looks like to file a report. We're going to talk a little bit about the laws that back up all of this. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to sit with someone when they're in a moment of crisis. Because I think that that will be the most useful tool for you all to have that spans outside of supporting people who may have experienced something really traumatic, but also just includes sitting with folks that are experiencing a crisis for any host of reasons. The world makes sure to keep giving us new reasons to be experiencing crises every month or so. And so this is just a good set of tools for you all to have in your back pocket as you do this work, either virtually or in person. Hopefully once we have the opportunity to be all together again, whenever that comes up. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts that they would like to share before we jump into things?
They're a quiet crowd.
That's
so.
okay.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So with this Title IX training, we'll also have to probably do the online, like the...
Yes, many of you who have been employed at the college in the past know that we have an online training. That online training is in the process of being updated, so you won't get that now. Unfortunately, it won't be ready until August 14th. And that specific date, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in just a little bit, why that August 14th date, if you don't already know, but that will be coming.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it's okay that y'all are a quiet group. I think Zoom, it does this thing too, where because everyone's got their mics muted, which is great and is a good way generally to go about things, that creates this vacuum. And so it's like, does anyone have any questions? And you like don't want to break the silence. So I totally understand. Just know that I'm somebody who will pause for a really long time, to the point where it's like, is he broken? Like, is something wrong? So just know that if I'm pausing for a long time, I just want to give you ample opportunity to formulate questions if you have them. Okay, great. So I'm gonna get my screen share going here, because I have some stuff prepped in PowerPoint, which I know is not the best, but it's what I got. Okay, share. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the laws that we use as the basis for our Title IX work and our sexual assault and sexual misconduct work on Whatcom's campus, as well as college campuses across the country. So there are 3 laws that kind of work together, and they all work together to be combined for kind of a greater gender equity on campus. So there's Title IX VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act, which I do want to recognize as a very gendered like name of the law, but the law expands outside of not just for women, but also for men, as well as folks outside the gender binary. And then the Clery Act as well, which I don't know if y'all are having Rocky come talk to you, but it's one of her favorite topics to talk about. So I'll touch on it very briefly today. So the goals of this portion of the training, I know it says this training, but it's just this little brief portion, is just to let you know a little bit about the history of these 3 laws, how they work, consider your role in these laws and how they work, and then learn a little bit about some upcoming changes that have been passed down by the Department of Education. And that's that August 14th deadline. So we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so the laws, it's important to know all of this. So first is Title IX, and we, generally speaking, when we talk about sexual assault or sexual misconduct on college campuses, we house it under the umbrella of Title IX, even if one of the other 2 laws is really the one that's driving a campus effort. So for example, this training and the fact that I'm meeting with you to do this training isn't required under Title IX, it's required under VAWA. But we're going to call it Title IX because that's kind of the shorthand that colleges have decided on, even though so much of what the efforts we actually make in creating a more equitable campus based on gender is driven by laws that aren't Title IX. So Title IX is a civil rights law that prohibits educational institutions from receiving federal funding if they limit opportunities based on sex. So for a really long time, it was just about sex. It was not about gender. And the difference there being the biological versus gender being a construct that is an identity that people hold. And so this has been, that was hotly debated, and VAWA did a lot to remove that. But really, for the longest time, this law was just applied to academic programs. So whether or not you're admitting an equal number of men and women, and athletics, whether or not there was equal opportunity for men and women to compete in athletic events. So for a really, really long time, that was it. And so since then, the other laws came along to expand what it means. The first is the Violence Against Women Act. So this is the first federal law passed that acknowledged domestic violence as a crime. So previous to this, all domestic violence laws on the books were either state or local laws. So this is the first one that sets and recognizes that domestic violence is in fact a crime at a federal level. And so contained within this very expansive law was college reporting requirements around people experiencing sexual misconduct, assault, domestic violence, dating violence. And it required colleges to adopt discipline procedures around these, such as informing victims of this, of resources. And I'm going to use the word victim just here because this is what the law says. I prefer to use the term survivor for folks that have experienced a sexual assault or sexual misconduct, but that's the word the law uses, so I am going to use that for this exact moment and then not again. And then finally, it required colleges to adopt training practices for staff and make training available to students. So that's why we're here. And then finally is the Clery Act. And the Clery Act is a consumer protection law that was passed after the assault and murder of Janine Clery in her dormitory. It's a really tragic story. I won't go super into depth about it, but essentially after that, after she was tragically murdered, her parents pushed to require colleges to share their crime statistics with prospective students and the community at large. And so with that came the responsible employee piece, which is where you all fit into it, in letting your supervisor or filing a report so that way we can accurately report any numbers of sexual assaults or misconducts that take place on our campus. So I know that part's a little bit dry, but I want you to know what the basis of why I'm asking you to potentially report something if you hear about it, if it comes up in this context. So the Title IX office at Whatcom Community College, talk about us a little bit, and by us, I mean all two of us. It's myself and Becky Rawlings, who's the Executive Director of HR. Becky has been the Title IX coordinator for a really long time, and then recently my position as pretty much just Title IX and ADA coordinator was formed, really in recognition that having somebody who wasn't in charge of HR was good for creating a bit more impartiality, as well as just the amount of work that needs to be done on our campus around these topics, and recognizing that Becky just didn't have enough time with her other HR executive director duties. So we do work really closely together. One thing I really appreciate about our Title IX office is we do have somebody who identifies as male and somebody who identifies as female. And so people can report based on someone, often folks feel more comfortable reporting to somebody who shares a similar gender identity to them. And I think by having both of us in the office, we help achieve that. So that's something that I think is a strength of Whatcom, the way Whatcom currently has things set up. We also provide trainings to staff, student clubs and classes. I'm saying this also a little bit hopefully. I know Becky has done some stuff with clubs and classes, but not as much as I would like. So that's something we're hoping to expand in the future. So if you want someone to come chat with your club or class, let me know. We also investigate allegations of sexual misconduct and discrimination on our campus, and especially of gender discrimination, because that's the stuff that's covered under that Title IX law. And so that's a big piece that we do as well. And we also work with outside organizations to build a better sexual violence response practice in Whatcom County. This is something that Whatcom County has been working on. There's a commission on domestic violence and sexual assault, currently examining all of the practices in Whatcom, whether that is from St. Joe's to Bellingham PD, to Linden PD, you name it. They're all examining anyone that has to respond to sexual violence within the county. And we work really closely with them to make sure that we are doing what we can, not only to improve what Whatcom does, but to improve what those other organizations are doing too. So that's a lot of what we spend our time working on. I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions about what I've talked about so far, the laws, and then how Whatcom organizes itself? Okay. Oh, Bree?
Yeah. Sorry, it came up.
No, that's why I wait.
In media, there's often like I guess Law and Order SVU. I haven't watched it all the way or watched it at all actually, but like people in media often say like, "Hey, I have to let you know I'm a mandatory reporter," and they often spring this upon the person after they have like told them in like semi-confidentiality. Is there a part of that law that requires us to say, "Hey, we're a mandatory reporter," before, during, after, or to the survivor or something like that?
Yes. So there's a couple pieces that I want to talk about here. First, my general recommendation is that anytime it feels like somebody is ramping up to tell you something that feels really personal or pretty intense, is just to pop in and say, "Hey, just so you know, I'm a responsible employee here at the college." I like to shy away from the term mandatory reporter.
Okay, gotcha.
Because it's not enforced by like state law per se.
Okay.
So what I prefer is responsible employee. If you prefer mandatory reporter, if that's easier for you, that's fine. That's just why I use that term differently.
Mhm.
So you'll say like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm a responsible employee, and I have to let the college know if like you tell me about anything about sexual assault or sexual misconduct on our campus. Just a heads up." And if they say, "That's fine, great." And if they say, "Well, then I don't know if I want to talk to you," then you also say, "Okay, I totally understand and respect that decision."
Right.
And you leave it at that.
Okay.
So that's the first piece. That's my first recommendation, is let them know. I do know at some college campuses, some faculty like to put it in their like email signatures when they're sending out kind of from their staff email address. Let you all decide if that's something you're interested in doing. It kind of helps people understand that dynamic from the get-go, which can definitely be useful.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, it may be useful to say that at the beginning of your relationship with that person, whether that's a mentoring relationship, whether that is, a club relationship, kind of however that works, just saying like, "Hey, when I'm in my official capacity here at the college, I am a responsible employee. This is where things get a little bit weird, is that official capacity piece. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about was, when you are at home and you're hanging out with your roommates, you are not a responsible employee. When you are on campus, you are, even if you're on campus in kind of a like non-employee setting, right? So if you're in the library, also, this is an absurd thing because no one's on campus right now. So taking a second to acknowledge that. But when you're on campus and folks could see you as like an official of the college, then you are a responsible employee. And so unfortunately, there's not a hard and fast rule of when people are seeing you as a representative of the college. You kind of have to use your gut there. So if it's like a friend that you know outside of the college that you hang out with regularly, you run into them in the library and they tell you about a thing, are they telling you because they're your friend who you hang out with regularly, or are they telling you because you work at the IC?
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel that they're telling you because they're your friend and you hang out regularly, then you don't have to report it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a lot of weird nuance, and there's times when you just got to trust your gut. And I trust you too. I really do. Because the whole point of this isn't to find out everybody's business. It's to find out if there's something that the college needs to know about so we can take steps to protect people. Right. And I trust you all to be able to listen to your own sense and your own guts in figuring out, is this something that needs to be reported? Because it could potentially, if the college doesn't do anything about it, more people could come to harm, is the biggest piece.
Okay.
I guess there's a third thing I want to say. I'm not a huge fan of the responsible employee protocol in college campuses. I really love that like full-time staff and faculty need to do it. But there are times when you work in especially sexual assault response, you learn a lot about trauma-informed care for folks. And one of the biggest pieces is not ever taking somebody's choice away from them, right? And so when you have someone who is a responsible employee, sometimes it can lead to a dynamic where someone tells you something and you don't get the chance to like interrupt them and be like, hey, like pump the brakes real quick before you tell me what I think you're about to tell me. Sometimes you don't get that opportunity, and then it does kind of take the choice away from the survivor. I'm not a huge fan of that. If ever you find yourself in a situation where that's happened, let's talk about it a little bit and figure out if there's a way that we can put the choice back into the person's hands. Because any report we receive, we don't act on it. It doesn't immediately lead to like a big investigation, right? The survivor has to want an investigation to happen. But all the same, I'm all about empowering the survivor to make choices around their own story and what they would like to see happen in their own life. So we can talk about that later on down the road. So that was a very long answer to a very good and quick question. Did that bring up questions for other folks? I can't see everybody's pictures, so I encourage you to just unmute yourself and holler.
Hey, Ben, I got a question.
Yeah, Alex.
Okay, so I know that none of us are at the physical college, but let's say that if we were, and so if somebody came up to me and told me that something had happened to them, regarding about this, and if I'm not working at the IC, how do I report it, and who do I report it this to? If the incident happened to any of my fellow peer students.
So we'll talk about that a little bit. Let's just jump into it now. So there's a couple different ways that you can report. First and foremost, you can just email me. My email address is really, unfortunately, the word breed @whatcom.edu. It is not my favorite, but it's breed, so it's breed. It's just a really unfortunate email for a Title IX coordinator to have. I voiced this with IT, but that's a whole other can of worms. So you can email me. The other option, and this is something that I think is really useful to people. Sorry, y'all just got to see my email a little bit just then. There's nothing in it that's super sensitive. So because our website's search function is garbage, I always tell people just to Google what they're looking for with the word Whatcom in front of it. So Google Whatcom incident report. Oh, that's even worse. It's a little bit down, the whatcom.edu address. And this talks through how to fill out an incident report, including how to fill one out online. And this, I think, is the most useful thing for folks, because you can fill out an incident report. And Alex, this is something you could do. You can fill that out wherever you are. Right, so you can fill that out on your computer at home. You can fill it out. I would encourage you not to fill out an incident report in like a hyper public place on campus, because if you're writing down people's names and stuff that aren't your own and someone's looking over your shoulder, that's not ideal. But if you're at home, if you're in a fairly like private tucked away spot on campus, whatever the case may be, the other thing you can do is fill it out anonymously, which since you all are responsible employees, you should really tie your name to it in case I have any follow-up questions. But for other folks, if you have somebody who's like, hey, something happened at the college and I don't know how to report it, this anonymous reporting tool can be really helpful for them, because that way they don't have to tie their name to it if they don't want to. If they're like, hey, I just want the college to know that this happened to me, and then I just want to be done. Like, that's the extent of the energy I'm willing to put into this, and then I'm done. They can fill it out here. And it doesn't require a name. We just ask for a description of the incident and a couple other questions, so that way we know kind of the best way to follow up. And the follow-up teams, generally speaking, are either the behavioral intervention team or the bias incident response team are the folks who step in when those reports are filed. Other questions, thoughts? Okay, so we're going to jump back into it real quick. Oh, it started at the beginning. Rookie mistake. Okay, so your role, as I talked about, and we talked about this a lot. So you're a responsible employee. So you just need to let either your supervisor know that something has happened, or fill out an incident report if someone tells you about a sexual assault or misconduct that they experienced at the college. Again, I will tell you, as somebody who's been a responsible employee at colleges for a decade. Oh my God, for a decade now, just realized that. Lots of times you will say, I'm a responsible employee. I'm going to need to report this out because it feels like you're veering into this territory. And I would say it's about 50-50 split between people who say, in that case, never mind, I'm not interested in telling you about it, which is great. And I always say, thank you. And I can put you in touch with some folks who you can talk to that don't have to report it, because there are some folks on our campus that can do that. And then about the other half say, yeah, I still really need to talk to you about it. So I'm fine. Like, go ahead, do what you need to do, but I really need to talk to you about it. So it's about 50-50. We'll talk a little bit about how to do this artfully in just a minute. And then these reports help us build our Clery report at the end of the day. Clery reports don't include people's names. They're just numbers. So it is all like de-identified information. And it really is about just letting folks know what's going on our campus before they arrive here. Okay, upcoming changes. So this is where I can't talk about this without wearing my political hat. So just know that going in. So the current presidential administration, their Department of Education, decided to implement some new Title IX regulations during the pandemic, which was a really shitty thing to do. So those are required to be in place by August 14th. We are currently working on emergency provisions to meet this new requirement. They are not ready. And they will just be emergency temporary provisions until we can get a better system put in place. We've been working with our Attorney General at the state level, trying really hard to just get something put in, like just a temporary Band-Aid to get us through on that August 14th deadline. That's why I keep mentioning that August 14th deadline in relation to the online trainings, is because we're waiting until that deadline hits for our online training vendors to like actually catch up and put the right information in those trainings. These, some of the new regulations are frankly damaging to our ability to help survivors and our ability to do our work. The new regulations are really tough. So we're doing our best to make sense of them. If you have questions about it, and if you have heard anything about this and you're angry about it and you want to talk to me at some other point, I could talk for a really long time, which is why I'm not going to spend a ton of time here today on it, because we have more to get through. But just know that some of this will be updated, and that will be communicated with the campus as soon as we get all of the feedback that we have out at the moment for our temporary stopgap. And then we will have, once that temporary stopgap is done, we will have a lot of working groups that will include students, staff, faculty, outside constituents, with our community partners, all weighing in on what our permanent policies will be in order to meet the new regulations. Assuming, fingers crossed, that Joe Biden doesn't get elected and then immediately repeal all of the new regulations. That is kind of where my hope is, because they're just really not great. With that comes the topic of gender equity outside of the binary. So in the past, Title IX under the Obama administration was explicitly expanded to include trans and non-binary students, which was great. And then the Trump administration repealed that, which is crappy. But the good news is Washington State is a pretty forward-thinking state, and the Washington State laws still protect trans and non-binary folks from discrimination on our campuses. And so Whatcom Community College is beholden to that no matter which state your butt is currently seated in. We are all, not only is the state law mandating it, but we at Whatcom are hugely supportive of our trans and non-binary folks on our campus and their right to access and education, just the same as everyone. So regardless of what the Department of Education has to say about it, that's our stance on it, just so you all are aware. Okay. Any questions? We're going to shift gears a little bit into talking about how to support people if they do come to you and disclose something, kind of what the best practices there are. But do folks have questions before we jump into that? I'm not hearing anybody, so I'm going to move forward. Okay. Okay. So, oh, did I hear somebody unmute? No, I didn't. I made it up. Oh, Tony.
Yeah, it was me. I pressed the wrong button I didn't want to open my bottle too loud. Sorry.
That is all good. I appreciate it. Okay. So when talking with Tanya a little bit, what we decided was kind of the best use of our time was to let you know what the laws are, let you know what your role in those laws are, and then talk about how to do that in a way that's productive, right? Like if someone comes to you and discloses something, having some tools to address them like directly and with sensitivity and from a place that understands trauma is really important. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit with the rest of our hour that we have left. I hope you feel that time has flown, because I certainly do. But then again, I'm the one talking and you all are the ones hanging out listening to me. So I appreciate that you are doing that. Thank you. Okay, so what I want you to get out of this, I want you to explore how to tell if someone wants to disclose something to you, because sometimes people aren't going to come out and say it. Sometimes they are. And they're going to be like, hey, I have to, and you're the person. So buckle up. We're going on a ride. I'm going to tell you about this. But lots of times folks don't. I want you to know about the resources available at Whatcom, especially those non-reporting resources. So that way, if folks want to talk about it, but they don't want a report filed, who to talk to, it's the counseling office. Spoiler alert. I'm going to say it here and I'm going to say it later. So that way it sticks with you. It's the counselors. Counselors have like counselor privilege. They don't have to tell anybody anything. In fact, they can't. So just know. It's the counselors. And then practice some best ways. If we have time, practice some best ways to respond when someone discloses. I'm going to just kind of do some, just like shout out to some questions posed. Okay, so let's talk about when someone might be coming to you wanting to tell you something big. So phrases that give us pause. This is what I like to think of. So phrases that tip you off that something might be going on with somebody and they want to tell you something big are things like, so the other night something happened. No one starts with something happened unless that something was pretty big. It could be something really good, right? Like something happened, I found $100,000, which would be awesome. Not likely where that's going, but the fact that they haven't just come out and said what happened should be a tip off to you that it was something big. If you're talking to somebody and they're talking about their relationship and they're talking about their partner regularly taking their phone away or taking their phone away at all, could be another red flag. That's something that I hear about semi-commonly, and it can be a tip-off to domestic violence or dating violence. Things like she or he or they get mad at me when I talk to people about this, but I just need to, can be a tip-off. Not necessarily, but it can be a tip-off. Sorry, I got a weird phone call. Okay. Things like he always wants to know where I am or who I'm with. That can be another red flag. I don't know how to talk about this. Pause. Things like, but I just feel like this doesn't really happen to guys, but like this crazy thing happened to me. Because the truth of the matter is, just by its very nature, sexual assault, misconduct, and dating and domestic violence is always really heavily gendered. And so a lot of our ideas of masculinity that we bring into it are that this stuff doesn't happen to men, but it does. It's also that men are the only people who perpetuate it. Don't get me wrong. Men are by and large the main perpetrators of this type of trauma, something that we as men have a long way to work on. But this stuff does happen to men. It happens to men in hetero relationships. It happens to men in non-hetero relationships. It happens to men in not even necessarily romantic relationships, but just in the relationships of the folks that they live with. So something to keep in mind as well. And the big tip off is when it's like, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about. I really don't want you to think of me differently though. Because that can often be a big barrier to disclosing something big that's happened in someone's life. Other things that could give you pause, other things that could be kind of inviting you to dig a little deeper, especially in the folks that you know well. So extreme behavior changes in folks, going from a hardcore extrovert to really not talking to anybody and being very introverted. Lots of crying can be another tip off. Not necessarily is it Title IX related, right? It doesn't mean that it's sexual in nature. The lots of crying could be from other trauma. I know that, especially at the outset of COVID, there were a lot of Zoom meetings where a lot of tears were shed just from the sheer feeling very overwhelmed with all of the sudden change. But that doesn't mean we don't want to check on people, right? So if you know somebody who's crying a lot, checking in and saying like, hey, what's going on? This is just something I've seen and I want to be here for you. If you see someone engaging in self-harm practices, again, may not be related to anything sexual, but is always worth pausing and asking them and inviting a deeper conversation. Increased medication use, including alcohol and other drugs. And I say increased, recognizing that folks have different usage levels that they're comfortable with. And so when you see that change, that can be a bit of a red flag. Avoiding particular people or situations, changes in diet or appetite. And finally, the big one that I think isn't talked about enough yet is changes in social media use. So if suddenly somebody starts dating somebody new and they just disappear from Instagram, even though they've been using Instagram a lot previous to that, that is a big old fat red flag and should be definitely something that should give you pause and invite the conversation a little bit deeper. Any thoughts, questions about kind of those signals people send to dig a little deeper with them?
I got one.
Mm-hmm.
I got one that actually happened like about a week ago to me. Especially with the quarantine going on, a lot of it is turning into text-based communication, particularly. And I don't really do phone calls a lot with, or whatever it is, calls with people a lot. Not just in general. Like I do a lot of text-based communication. And one of the things was one of my friends in a group chat was like, "Hey, can I call you?" Very immediately was like, "Oh, okay, yes, sure, I'm cooking right now." And yeah, it turned out to be pretty bad. I don't know. She's not out of that situation yet either, but like just a thing that disrupts the daily routine sort of thing. Yeah. Like the immediate like, okay, yeah, no, I need to call you. Like, oh, all right, yes, okay. So.
Yeah, that's big. And those are the signals you're looking for. I hope your friend finds a way out of that situation. I know during COVID right now, it's really tough.
I really, really encouraged it, but right now, who knows?
Well, and the truth of the matter is, and this is something that I think is hard to hear, in domestic violence situations, sometimes the safest environment for somebody is in that situation and not leaving it until they have all their ducks in a row. But I've got some resources for you at the end of this. So in case you want them, have them. And then if you want, you and I can also have a different offline chat if you want some additional thoughts on that. But I'll let you decide how you feel about that.
Who knows? Yeah.
Other thoughts about those phrases that give you pause or invite deeper conversation?
I have one. So are there any like more subtle kind of ways to signal you that like nonverbal, because maybe the person who is how do I say this, the abuser or whatever is with them, and so
that can be really tough. And honestly, this is where, and I mentioned this earlier, but I want to emphasize again, because I think that's a really good question. Listen to your gut. Your gut can tell you a lot about situations that no amount of training can really prep you for, right? If someone is giving you kind of some like eyes and like trying to like pull you away from the conversation or invite you to a private conversation, even if, that other potential abuser is nearby, trust your gut and listen to it. If it feels weird to you, listen to it and see if you can't follow up with that person later, right? If you can follow up in a more private medium. I have become, just really aware lately, especially in COVID times, of how closely monitored cell phones can be and why phone conversations are really great, because texts, if they aren't deleted, can cause problems for folks. And so phone calls can be a good way to reach out to folks a little more subtly. And if they can, step away and have a quick conversation with you and let you know what's going on, you can help in that way. But really it is trust your gut. Most of the time, folks, when they are near enough their abuser that they are concerned about trying to send nonverbals, often they won't, because that abuser is so close, they're worried that they will pick up on those nonverbal cues as well, right? And so often when we hear about this, and this is just from experience at Whatcom and the folks at Whatcom who experience these things, often they will tell folks about them in a much more private setting. So study groups are where we see this come up with some frequency. It's where we see things taking away of car keys, taking away of phones. We'll hear about it in those types of settings. But typically they are school-related clubs, organizations, study groups, whatever the case may be, in which they are isolated from their abuser. So that way they feel safe in sharing what's happening in their lives. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? I know one of the things that's really great about a lot of the bars, I've seen it in town and we've seen it on the internet too. Sometimes bars will have code words that people can go up to a bar and say a code word, and the bartender will read that as they need to be helped out of a situation because their date is going really poorly or they're with somebody who could potentially harm them. Unfortunately, there isn't really a great agreed upon universal set of code words for society at large, right? So I think that's something that as we continue to have this conversation, as we continue to centralize this conversation in the moments that we can, we'll hopefully start to develop a better way to talk about it. Yeah. It was a good question.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Hey, Ben,
Okay.
I just had a thought.
Shoot.
So when I used to work for the Office of Student Life as a student ambassador, we were kind of taught as student leaders or student employees, we weren't that we're not taught to disclose anything. And I guess the only people that were to disclose something will be the counselors themselves. I'm not sure how we as a student leader or student employees, how do we disclose this? I mean, should there be any disclosure or not?
I guess I'm a little confused about what you mean by disclosure.
Let's say someone comes to one of us about how they're telling their story about how they're being sexually harassed or
sure.
How do we deal with disclosure, basically?
So when you say disclosure, do you mean you telling other people about the situation, or?
No, just the person that's telling us what just happened, the incident that just happened.
Okay. We're going to talk about that right now. So that was a great segue, Alex. So here, your job, and you are right in being trained on this, your job is not a counselor. That being said, there are times that showing up for someone, a survivor of a pretty intense or traumatic incident, the way that you show up and support them in that initial period is really important because it validates their story and validates the experience that they've had. So I don't want you, and we're going to talk about this, to think about yourself as coming in to fix their problem or in any way, try to solve that for them. But instead be someone who is a good listener. So let's talk about best practices in responding in case, in times when someone is disclosing something big to you. I want to emphasize something. While I am the Title IX coordinator and all of this is couched in that, like sexual harassment, sexual discrimination, and sexual assault, all that stuff, this stuff works regardless. If someone is having a really traumatic moment, all of this will work in supporting someone who's disclosing something big to you. So first and foremost, thank them. Say, thank you for telling me the story. That was really important, and I'm so glad that you did. Because the telling of traumatic incidents in one's life is not easy. And being thanked for it affirms the work that you've done in telling somebody that story, because it's emotional work. It's a ton of emotional labor to do that. And is just really, really impactful to know that you're affirming that person's decision to tell the story. The next is, don't ask too many questions. Your job is not to investigate. Your job is not to pry out the facts. Your job is to listen to what they have to tell you. So let's say they come up and they say, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. You say, hey, I'm a responsible employee. Just so you know, if this talks about, sexual assault, I'm going to need to tell the college. And they say, that's fine. I just really want to talk to you. They tell you the story. Just listen. You're not investigating. You don't need to know anything about what anyone was wearing. You don't need to know about where it happened. You don't need to know about any of the details. You just need to listen to them. If the survivor decides to move forward with an investigation, the investigator will ask all those questions. It's in the moment. We don't want people to have to tell their traumatic story over and over and over again in great detail. It's not good for them. It's not a healthy healing moment to have to tell that story over and over again. That's what all the research says. So don't ask too many questions. Avoid telling the person what to do. I think this is really big, and just focus on walking them through their options. And we'll talk about options here in a second. So when someone comes to you and says, hey, this thing happened, I've got what's going on. Don't say hey, you should talk to Ben or Becky. You should tell them about what happened and you should do an investigation. Don't tell them that. They will be able to decide that for themselves. Just say hey, right now, if you want, I could submit this incident report for you. If that would be easier, that's one option. Option two is we could submit it, anonymously without your name if you don't want anyone to follow up. Or I could walk you over to the counselors right now. What feels good? By laying out options and letting them choose, you give the power back to that person to move forward in the way that feels healthiest for them. And given that you're not counselors, you're not mental health care professionals, that's the perfect thing for you to do, is trust the person to make the healthiest decision for themselves. I think for lots of us, we get into this problem solver mode, myself included, and want to just be all right, I know what to do. I'm going to take you over to the counselor, or I'm going to take you over to Ben or Becky. But really let them be in the driver's seat. Never ever guarantee an outcome. So if someone tells you about, especially if it's another student on campus who is the potential abuser, never say, don't worry, we'll get them kicked out. I know you wouldn't say that anyway, but I'm just saying really, really never say that. I'm not saying that our processes fail, but I am saying they are not perfect. And so while we continue to work on improving them, we can't guarantee an outcome, especially because usually you're only getting one side of the story. And while we absolutely listen to and believe folks when they disclose things to us, we do have to give the other person due process in what we do. And so just never guarantee an outcome. One thing is also listening with empathy and not turning it back on yourself if you can avoid it. So listening to what the story the person's telling you, not being oh my God, I had something like that happen to me. And suddenly you're telling them about your trauma. So they're sitting there trying to talk about theirs. Now you're telling them about yours. And I know that it's a lot of work, but in this leadership role, sometimes you gotta, just couch that in the back seat and then, kind of process through some of that with a supervisor or trusted person later. So the next piece is give them the power. So that kind of comes back to that not making decisions for folks, but really letting somebody know that aside from your responsible employee obligations, they get to choose everything that happens. They will get to choose whether or not an investigation happens. They will get to choose with one exception, which is if the piece that they say indicates a pattern of behavior that could lead to future victimization on campus, then sometimes we have to step in if there is a huge pattern regardless, but then they still don't have to be involved in the process. They can just say, no, I don't want to be involved in the investigation, but we'll still do one. That very seldomly happens. But just by giving folks the power back in their lives about what to choose to do next, who to talk to next, what to do with their story, how to report it, all of that stuff can be really, really helpful for them to understand that they are in control of what is going on around them. Because often when violence occurs, it's about the removal of control. So we want to give that back to folks. One thing that's big, have these conversations in a private space to the best of your ability. The IC, y'all, it is a small room. It is cozy. It is great. But as these conversations happen, try to find a way to, move that conversation elsewhere. One thing, especially in open spaces, that can be a little tough is the conversation can start. And if you're in the IC and it's only the two of you, it can be private at the start, but then other people will come in. Just try to practice some good awareness of the area around you. And if someone starts disclosing something to you, and then another person joins the room or whatever the case may be, say like, hey, I want you to keep telling me the story. I want to hear more, but I want to do it in a private space. Do you mind if we like go find an empty classroom or go into somebody's office or whatever the case may be? I've never had someone say, well, then I'm done talking to you. And I've done this a lot where I've said, hey, it seems like this is a private conversation. Do you mind if we move it? Folks generally are very receptive to that. They don't want to put that out on display for other folks. Okay, so the next one, and this is a piece that I plug just in case, but I will tell you that in not only being a responsible employee, but being very actively involved in dealing with sexual assaults on college campuses, this has literally never happened. So if there was an assault and it was recent, try to have the person, and again, just let them know this is an option is what I mean here, go to St. Joe's before showering or changing clothes, because that is a way that St. Joseph's, they have rape kits and they can get DNA evidence that way. Now, when I say that's never ever happened, what I mean is in all of my years of doing this work on college campuses, most folks tell or disclose the trauma that has happened to them days, weeks, months after the fact. It is usually not immediately. The dominant society in the United States puts such a hush on these issues that folks don't always feel comfortable coming forward and talking about them. And it can lead to a long period of time in which people are suffering in silence because they don't know who to go to, or they don't feel comfortable going to anyone, or they're trying to just make sense of it on their own, which is really tough. So just know that even though St. Joe's has that resource for folks, you probably won't ever be in a position where someone will come to you and say, I was literally just assaulted and I need to know what to do. If they do, and you say, hey, they do rape kits at St. Joseph's, and they say, great, can I go there, please? That's awesome. But just know that very seldomly comes up, unfortunately. Okay, thoughts about what to do in the moment. Alex, I hope that answered the question that you were getting at. I'm seeing nodding. Okay, great. Other thoughts, questions? Oh, I heard somebody. Tanya?
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, I'm gonna start driving to the hospital, so I'm trying to join in the. Hold on.
Sounds good. Okay, so we're gonna jump forward. Oh yeah, Tony.
Alternate has a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you.